Thank you very much. And thanks, guys. Thanks for your time. Hope everyone's having a great week and a great Friday. A brief agenda about what we'll go through today, but a quick introduction from myself. My name's Andrew. I'm head of sales here at Nomad Homes. I've been in the region for coming up to 15 years in and around real estate for the past 8. Joined by Eddie, who's one of our senior investment advisors. Similarly, been in and around real estate for 15 years.
Yeah, close to 15 years.
Close to 15 years. Q&A at the end. So yeah, don't hold back on any questions that you might have. We'll spin through the industry overview and things that we're seeing at the moment, some post-COVID trends, and how that's impacted certain areas, and the migration of people to and from the region. 2024, what we're forecasting, and certainly what we're forecasting beyond that, what Dubai and the UAE is forecasting beyond that, and then a little bit about Nomad Homes. So over the past 3 years, huge changes in Dubai's real estate market. Big influx of high net worth buyers, which has been very interesting. I think a lot of it almost to the surprise of a lot of people. Dubai and the wider region have avoided the slowdown that has affected a lot of other property markets. On the side of that, new industries and new initiatives has been excited to see the impact of the golden visas, and the very recent change in the golden visas. We've certainly seen it from our side, people looking to invest purely for golden visas. On top of that, we're seeing things like branded residences. The picture on the right-hand side is the Mercedes-Benz residence, which has recently been launched. Impacts across not just Dubai, but places like Ras Al Khaimah. We'll drill into that shortly, but obviously huge shifts for the gambling and gaming licenses, what that's doing to the Emirate, and further things that we'll be seeing going forward. So a few high-level points. 2023 saw residential prices beat their previous 2014 high. Off-plan still remains very, very strong, as it does to ready properties. There's a few reasons for that we'll go through in the next couple of slides, but new units is certainly a big driver for a lot of people, new and vacant units. In the last quarter of 2023, rental contract registrations have increased, which is a great sign for both new people moving to Dubai and then, invariably renting first and then converting to sales later. I think we can share the infographic. There was a big infographic that went around on LinkedIn about the number of high net worth individuals that have moved into Dubai and the UAE. We've seen that become a mainstay of the market. It feels like every week or couple of weeks there's a new record being broken, whether it's for overall transaction or plot or price per square foot. It doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. There aren't many launches for affordable housing sectors, especially on the villa side. So existing villa communities doing well and continuing to do well. Very, very strong influx of new investors over the past couple of years. So in the past year, 71,000 new investors, 42% of which were non-resident. That's a trend that we're seeing at Nomad as well. A lot of international buyers purchasing either for themselves, for golden visa purposes, or for differing types of investment, whether short-term property, long-term property, whether they are looking to build a portfolio, so multi-asset purchases. But an interesting thing we're seeing as well is a lot of non-resident investors who haven't visited Dubai, and that obviously propels a lot of the off-plan sales as well.
So when we're looking at post-COVID, what's happened in Dubai since 2020, 2021, we've seen an increase of people shifting towards Dubai from Europe and beyond. We've also seen a lot of the sales jump up within the residential sector, the investment sector. We've also seen people buying into some of the older communities. That's pushing the renovation revolution. We're seeing buyers buying up some of the older stock that's in the market, renovating them and transforming them into short-term rentals. So that's, we see an increase of buyers on that front. The other thing as well is that because we've seen the increase in the demand for ready units, that's pushed new developments from the developers, and hence we've seen a surge in the off-plan sales. And as Andy said as well, we've seen more branded residences and more premium projects being launched within the market. The appetite for the premium products is subject to the influx of high net worth individuals to the region as well, specifically Dubai. The other thing we've also seen is on the holiday homes or second home properties, an increase in people purchasing holiday homes in Dubai, purchasing second and third properties, increasing their portfolio, putting them on short-term rentals. We're seeing really high occupancy levels, up to 80% with really good yields. And with the long-term rentals, we've also seen an increase in the ROIs on the long-term rentals as well, which is reflecting the increase in the rental revenues. From the buyers, what we're seeing is a big proportion of buyers are cash buyers, but mortgages has also seen an increase over the last 3 years. What else? If we go on to looking at 2024 and beyond, we're seeing residential prices increase over this year and at about 5 to 7%. We are seeing that there is limited supply, in terms of new developments, but developers are still pushing forward with looking at about 78,000 over the next few years coming onto the market. That's not really going to, it's not going to accommodate the population growth, because we're expecting population growth we're sitting at about 3 million people currently, and they're anticipating getting up to about 5.8 million in Dubai. So even though we've got an influx of new residential projects coming into the market pretty much on a quarterly basis, it's not enough to sustain the population growth. So there should be an increase and a drive on new developments as well. And then when we look at UAE as an economy, we're seeing the GDP forecasted to grow by about 5%. And then other sectors as well, in terms of the entertainment industry, we've seen approvals for gaming licenses, especially starting in Ras Al Khaimah, and that's pushed investment into the Northern Emirates. The investments are reflected on real estate as well as hospitality. Another key thing to look at as well is the UAE's vision for 2033 and 2040. Some of the things on the agenda from the government perspective is looking at driving sustainable economic growth within the region and in the country. This is going to be leveraged on the strategic location of Dubai as a whole. It's always been a central location for trade, import and export, as well as tourism. I guess the goal here is, from a government perspective, is to attract national and international investments into the region to be more self-sufficient. That's bringing in more international companies to the region, and pushing in terms of innovation and economic growth. Some of the key initiatives that the governments are looking at are increasing the urban centers across the Emirates. Currently, we're based within the DIFC as an economic zone, Old Dubai being, Dera and Bur Dubai, where a lot of the businesses are, but they're looking to branch out into 5 other sectors across the Emirates. They're also looking at doubling the size of recreational spaces and residential developments across the Emirates. And they're looking at the infrastructure in terms of transportation links to be able to link all the suburban areas and the urban developments within the city.
Some really interesting things that we're seeing, certainly very quickly in 2024 already. The impact of interest rates coming down came down quicker than we were expecting. We were expecting sort of Q2. We have seen most banks bring their rates down quite substantially. There has been a huge increase in mortgage pre-approval applications. One of the issues that we are still seeing, as mentioned here, the supply constraint for townhouses and villas. Post-COVID, a lot of people left apartments or were living in apartments and migrated to the villa communities. and historically had very, very low rent because of the impact of COVID. A lot of those people are still living in these communities and are benefiting from quite low rent. The rental index only lets people, or it's capped increases every year. So trying to find good vacant units is a problem. And as you can see, the forecast for the coming few years is dominated by apartments. Not to say that there haven't been new launches recently for villas. Areas like Tel Al Al Gaf have launched and have done very, very well, and they'll continue to be new launches, but it is still very apartment driven. Further to Eddie's point about infrastructure, there were announcements about the expansion of the metro line. So into areas like Al Fajan and towards Jebel Ali, it means that the city is expanding where previously it used to be, or certainly for the past few years, out from from places like Dubai Marina out towards Dubai Land. We're now seeing it towards Abu Dhabi, which is a great shift. It's certainly easing some of the traffic issues that we've got at the moment, but it hasn't stopped, it hasn't stopped new launches in places like the Marina where there's only a few remaining residential plots. So really driving a lot of good growth, and we're seeing a lot of investors look to benefit from that as these areas really develop into more tourist areas. On the flip side, places like DIFC doing very, very well. A lot of company formation. I think the DIFC had its best year ever last year with company formation. A lot of family offices, a lot of financial institutions like hedge funds moving here for their regional headquarters. And again, the impact on the gaming licenses, it still remains to be seen, but I think we're already seeing huge interest in Ras Al Khaimah. We have had a lot of interest for off-plan and for ready units for Airbnb. It will be interesting to see how those develop. There's obviously also pending announcement for gaming licenses in Dubai, and we're not sure when those will happen. Furthermore, obviously, like the expo sites being turned into new communities, the announcement of the Maktoum Airport expansion continuing. So a lot to look forward to, certainly this year and in the coming years. A bit about us, what we do, who we are. We're Dubai's leading buyers agency. So we don't hold any stock. We only help buyers, whether it's a first-time home, whether it's you're moving up the ladder to a family home, whether you're looking for an investment, whether you're looking for a multi-asset purchase, whether it's a trophy home, anything and everything we can help. With. Initially, we were only focusing in Dubai, but obviously, as you've seen, the trend across the Emirate is spreading. There's a lot more off-plan going into Abu Dhabi as well, which is very promising. A lot of development on Yas Island and Sadia Island. We've mine and Eddie's background in real estate, and I was on the portal side as well. There has been a disconnect between like the buyer experience, if you like, and what an agent who's selling a property is trying to achieve. We are a single point of contact. It's concierge service. We have multiple, both international buyers and buyers in Dubai, which is nice. So we see a real big split, if you like. We don't just focus on one buying demographic. We have seen a big shift over obviously the last couple of years, moving from the rental space where a lot of people were not as comfortable buying post-COVID. It really has bounced back. I think what's nice to see in line with the government's planning and urban development is there is a big target for people living in Dubai longer term. So in line with these new developments, we're seeing infrastructure planning, urban development, so healthcares and schools, planning being built in alongside that, not just obviously the big flashy launches all the time. There is real thought going into it. So I think we are seeing a lot more sort of families and people looking to settle here. Interestingly, a lot of people moving here as well with the impact of Saudi and what that's looking like. A lot of people settling here and then doing the weekly commute to and from Saudi while Saudi is still growing. I think we're still seeing a lot of with how quickly prices have moved over the last couple of years. I think there are still concerns about where it will top out. We're not seeing a slowdown this year. I think there's a lot more people who are feeling comfortable about buying, which is good to see. I think there is more confidence in newer areas, confidence in the banks, confidence with affordability and eligibility. So we're seeing these shifts, and we look forward to seeing sort of where 2024 and beyond takes us. But yeah, a bit about us. If anyone has any questions about Nomad Homes or would like to speak to one of our advisors, of course, don't hesitate sort of to reach out. But does anyone have any questions about the Dubai, the Dubai market, or where it is at the moment, or where it looks like it's going to be going?
Just a quick question from me. I think I'll jump in if that's all right. Sorry, I don't know if I should have done this in chat. Is there a limit to the amount of property that can be created in Dubai? Obviously, overseas, we see countries with limited amount of space. You mentioned Singapore earlier. So property does increase in value because of that. How about Dubai?
That's a really good question. There probably is a limit. The government does a very, very good job at staggering launches and staggering availability to make sure that the market isn't always flooded. So, for example, a developer will launch, let's say, a big villa community that will be launched in phases and will be handed over in phases to make sure that it doesn't impact the rest of the available stock in the market. The UAE is not, and Dubai as an emirate, not a huge place, and so eventually, if growth continues, yes, there will be a limit. On the flip side, if you look at places like the Palm Jumeirah or the new Dubai Islands that have been launched in Deira, it's a lot of there's still a lot of, how do you say, creative construction, if you like, with the launch of new islands that impact available space. I hope that answered your question, Gary. There's a couple of questions.
Yep. No, that's fine, thanks.
Okay. The legal process for purchasing property in the UAE is pretty straightforward. If it's a cash purchase, there aren't really any restrictions on cash. There has been a lot more restrictions for anti-money laundering and KYC. Obviously, I think maybe everybody saw that the UAE has come off the grey list, which is great. So it means the processes that have been put in place for anti-money laundering checks, which is on the real estate side, is working. International buyers can get mortgages, and a lot of international banks offer that as well. Obviously, residential mortgages is pretty straightforward. For off-plan properties, there are just payment plans directly with the developers, and so it's effectively an interest-free loan that you have with, or payment plan that you have with the developer. That's why they're very attractive. The impact of Saudi on the market. We see a lot of people coming to Dubai, especially to work in Saudi. There are a lot of new industries launching in Saudi, and they are changing the rules for purchasing there, but it's not as straightforward just yet. So you do see a lot of people do the sort of weekly commute where it's 4 days a week in Saudi, 3 days a week in Dubai. I think that will only keep growing. Saudi is a country that we have our eye on as well for expansion. I think it's a very exciting prospect. I think when you look at places like Neom or New Maraba and how that's going to transform like existing cities plus Neom, which is a whole new development. I think it's an exciting time to be in the region. How these places will perform is yet to be seen, but Saudi certainly have the capital to back it up. The growth has been significantly consistent for the last 3 years. That's a really good question. So when are we looking for stabilization? I think towards the end of this year is when we'll start seeing stabilization. There were there was a lot. The last 2 or 3 months of last year were a bit slower in the market. January and February has been busy for everybody, but it can't continue, right? It doesn't always. Markets don't always go up. There's no big signals at the moment, or there are no big sort of indicators which would slow the market down. Anything outside of sort of the conflict currently in the Middle East, which I think is on everybody's mind, there isn't anything else linking the market to a slowdown. Rates are coming down, which is helping people buy. There's job creation here is very good. There is a restriction on good available stock, and even with the new launches, again, like I said, the staggering of when these new launches are handing over means that there will always be a sufficient balance between supply and demand.
I think another key thing as well is that when we look at Dubai as a major city, the price reflection here is significantly lower than any of the other major cities across the world. So there's still room for growth in that aspect. The price per square foot of what you purchase here is still quite competitive when you compare to any of the other sort of 20 top cities across the world. So that there is still a huge influx. And then with the foreign exchange as well, for a lot of foreign investments, it still makes it, a viable city to invest in.
Ken, any insights about the real estate for businesses, especially with the UAE's ambition to attract new industries? So if we talk about commercial is at a premium at the moment. There is not huge amounts of commercial office space being built, and there is a real need for it. In terms of manufacturing, there are out towards Jebel Ali a place called DIP, which is all newer warehouses. So there is, I think there is. We are not commercial specialists, by the way, but we have had people ask for. We have had requests for it.
But it's also in line with the government's vision for 2040, increasing production zones, increasing in industrial areas. That's something that they're driving towards in building the economy as well, and economic growth. The innovation sector, in terms of AI, in terms of just local industry, that's something that they're going to push towards 2033 up to 2040.
Abu Dhabi certainly made a big push as well. Their industrial zones, sort of outside of Abu Dhabi. But I think that will all be it will all be planned out in quite a methodical way. One of the big insights that we have heard about is what is a traditional sort of commercial area of Al Quoz, which is a lot of warehousing and original manufacturing. There have been, rumors for a certain number of years that eventually that will all be moved, because there's very prime land right in the middle of the city, and the goal is to move Al Quoz out to areas like Ras Al Khor, which is down near the creek, and DIP, which is out near Jebel Ali. Are there any restrictions on property ownership for foreigners in the UAE? There is no restrictions currently.
No, not in, because they're
not in the UAE. I think in some Emirates there might be it might be different to buy. Certainly not in certain areas you can't buy. Some areas are for Emiratis only, but apart from that, freehold areas there isn't any restrictions.
And there's just a few areas of leasehold purchases, but predominantly they're freehold without any restrictions.
What are the benchmark rates for prices per square foot for 2 to 3 bed apartments? Okay, we'll answer that first. It really varies. It would vary on the area. It would, so 2 to 3 beds in places like downtown would be significantly more expensive than 2 to 3 beds in places like Town Square, which are slightly further out.
I think to shed light on that, if we look at somewhere like the city center, if we look at downtown or DIFC, we'd be looking at about 2,500 per square foot at a starting price point. And then when we look at the types of properties, going up more towards the premium end, we can see that increase all the way up to about 6,000 dirhams per square foot. So there's varying prices across all categories. And then as the city pushes out and we get out of the CBD and a bit further out, we see the prices come down a bit. But as the city's growing, the areas that are sort of zone 2 and 3 around the central areas are appreciating, because a lot of developments are now, those areas are getting fully developed. You've got community developments, significant community developments within those areas, and those are appreciating. If we have a look at since 2020 to 2023, areas that are just about 15 minutes from downtown, such as Dubai Hills, has appreciated from a price point of about 1,600 per square foot, now getting up to about 18 to 1,900 per square foot. So yeah, that's just to give you a bit of an idea.
Can non-UAE citizens buy property in Dubai and stay there? Yes, you can. So if you buy a property, if it's over a certain price point, you get a golden visa. So you can stay for as long as you like. If you chose not to get a golden visa, I think tourist visas are 90 days.
Yeah.
You can have a 90-day tourist visa. I think you can also renew your tourist visa now without having to leave the country. If you don't have the golden visa.
The other, I guess, there's different visa, there are different visa types. Traditionally, you'd have a residence permit. If you purchased a property, you could get a residence permit that was a renewable residency visa for 2 to 3 years. And then any properties above 2 million dirhams, now as it stands, you can also qualify for a golden visa, which is a 10-year visa. As long as you maintain your investments within in the country, your real estate investments, you'd have your golden visa. The only subject would be coming up to renewal of that visa. You then need to show the proof of your investments. But otherwise, yes, you can, to answer your question simply, you can stay long term and apply for residency if you invest in real estate.
And the process for purchase of an apartment for a foreign national in the UAE. If you're non-resident, it's fairly straightforward. If it's a cash purchase, if it's not a cash purchase, we can arrange international mortgages. The deposit percentage is different, but it's not a difficult process at all. We partner with Knight Frank for all our mortgage requirements. We partner with them because they're a big global, well-known company, and so for cases like this, they look after our buyers. With new residential communities coming in Saudi, do you see investments go in that direction? Absolutely. I think there were, and that's why we're certainly looking at it. There's going to be a lot of investors and certainly a lot of buyers who, if they've invested in Dubai, similarly to what we're seeing in Ras Al Khaimah, there's a lot of investors buying in Ras Al Khaimah who've never visited the Emirate, but are confident on the back of the companies that are developing it. There's confidence there in the brands that are moving in, and I think it will be very similar with Saudi Arabia. From a developer perspective, clearly their sales are strong, but what are financing costs and construction costs like for them compared to historically? It's a very interesting question. I don't know 100%, but my assumption is that it has increased, obviously. I think an interesting thing we're seeing currently is off-plan properties used to be significantly cheaper than ready units. And that gap has, over the last few years, really, really shrunk. And so off-plan units now they're still maybe a bit less, but not as much less as ready units used to be. Whether that is a link to construction cost, or whether that is purely that they're able to now charge due to demand and supply restraints, I'm not 100% sure.
Land acquisition cost as well. The cost of land has gone up as well significantly. And when you're looking at private developers, they're purchasing the land from the government. So you've got the cost of construction and the cost of the land as well. You know, over the last 10 years, both of those costs have gone up, and that is reflected on, you know, the sales price of the projects in the region.
Can property be jointly owned by two parties in Dubai who are not related? 2 to 3 things putting in capital. Yes, that's available. UAE investing in international markets like Egypt. We'll also see investments in real estate from UAE investors. UAE investing in international markets like Egypt.
Yeah, Emaar is, as a local developer, is investing internationally.
Yeah, so there are more, and vice versa. So not only UAE investments or UAE-based developers investing globally, but we are now seeing more international developers coming here with all sort of different sizes. There was a new launch we had, and they're an Australian developer, and they've launched their first project, and they're looking to do 2 or 3. Not anything major, but sort of boutique apartment buildings.
There's a lot of cross-selling as well from UAE investors purchasing abroad.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are the maintenance fees for properties and what do they cover? So maintenance fees, you have what's called your service charges, and service charges are what are charges that go into. So if you're in an apartment, it will go into maintenance of the full building, the common areas, the lifts, swimming pools, paying for security, etc. You would still have your own maintenance costs. If, for example, your air conditioning stopped working or your water tank broke, you would pay for the maintenance inside your unit. There are maintenance companies that offer maintenance contracts separately for that. So they do air conditioning cleaning, and they'll do various checks throughout the year or cleaning water tanks and stuff. But those are sort of almost two separate fees, if you like.
Yeah, I think another thing as well to mention is that all the maintenance fees that are collected from property owners, whether they're in apartments or villa communities, are paid into escrow. The escrows are government controlled, and then the proceeds are you know, paid to the property management facilities. The homeowners associations that are set up on these properties can appoint you know, the facility management companies to manage those said properties.
And finally, what amenities are included with the property and what additional facilities are available? It depends on, it will depend by developer. Some developers, so for apartment buildings, generally they all come equipped with swimming pools and gyms. Some have even more facilities. So we saw that some have like saunas and steam rooms, and they have like play areas for the kids, or they have barbecue areas. In villa communities, again, we are seeing sort of a variance. And actually with the newer villa communities, there is sort of a requirement for more amenities, where previously, again, it would be swimming pools. Now there are more with tennis courts or paddle courts and basketball courts. Parks and green areas is now sort of a real standard that people are putting in. Restaurants or bars or cafes generally now within villa communities also.
Yeah, I think we've seen a shift in the developments over the last 5 years, and especially since COVID. A lot of developers are developing community-based apartments and community-based residential villa developments. So a lot of the amenities now will cover things like business rooms, meeting rooms. You'll have things like you know, Wi-Fi ready buildings across the developments. You'll have a lot of recreational facilities within the developments. You know, that includes residential towers and villa communities as well. So it's just to have ease for the residents who are staying within that area, that everything is within reach, you know, of the development. If you look at villa communities, you're also looking at things like schools, clinics, retail spaces as well. So there are quite a few amenities that are incorporated within the developments and the surrounding areas.
We'll arrange for our contact details to be sent round. If anyone has any more questions about investing in the UAE or financing, don't hesitate to reach out. We know it's it can be a bit of an unknown.